And I asked the question, has he had an underrated season?
You're listening to the PuckUps podcast. It's time to hit the ice with Brian D. Felice.
Welcome into episode 19 of the PuckUps podcast. I am Brian D. Felice, and thank you all for joining me on this rainy and gloomy Monday, March morning here in New England. But I promise we'll do our best to bring the sunshine and positivity because the Bruins did indeed find a way to earn a 3-2 shootout win over the weekend against the Washington Capitals. So we'll touch on that game and preview their upcoming games this week against the New Jersey Devils and the Montreal Canadiens. I also want to ask the question, are Jeremy Swayman and Charlie McAvoy having underrated seasons, both locally and nationally? We'll get to all of that. But before we do, if you haven't done so already, please go ahead and subscribe to the PuckUps on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else that you get your podcast. The subscribers on YouTube really help the channel. And of course, we are just getting this program started. And if you want to get in touch with me or be a part of the show, you can email me, info@thepuckups.com. You can tweet at me on X at @BrianDFelice_. You can tweet at the show at the PuckUps, or you can leave a comment on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, anywhere that the program has a social media account and posts content. Now let's kick things off with the Bruins win in Washington over the weekend. It was the second time in the span of a week that the Bruins and Caps faced off. The first being back in Boston on the 7th, where Victor Arvidsson scored a third period game-winning goal, and Elias Lindholm added an empty netter to ice the game for the Bruins. This one, however, needed more than regulation. It needed more than overtime, and it needed more than your ordinary shootout. In fact, this one took a 9-round shootout to determine a winner, and the combination of Fraser Minten and Jeremy Swayman decided to step up and play co-hero. The storyline heading into this game, however, was the line combinations that Marco Sturm was going to elect to go with. If you remember, against San Jose late last week, the Bruins lost that game, and they were down 4-0 with about 10 minutes to go in regulation. The line of Elias Lindholm, David Pastrnak, and Marat Husnudinov were not doing much of anything. The line of Morgan Geekie, Fraser Minten, and Alex Steeves weren't doing much of anything. And in particular, Pastrnak and Elias Lindholm doing a whole lot of nothing at 5-on-5 together has been a theme for quite some time now. Certainly dating back to the resuming of play post-Olympic break. But even before that, those two together at 5-on-5 just have not been generating or executing like you would expect a top line two, or any line two for that matter. So it was refreshing to finally see, after many fans and media personalities alike have been screaming to the heavens to shake things up front for the Bruins, Marco Sturm finally did so. It was a little too late, but when he did go to Pastrnak, Minten, and Husnudinov late in that game, they looked really good together. They scored a goal right away, and they were making things happen. They were creative. They were moving their feet. They looked like a pretty good line. Likewise, Morgan Geekie, Alex Steeves, and Elias Lindholm all of a sudden looked like they've been playing together for 10 years for those final 10 minutes of that game. They look great. So, surprise, surprise, you split up Lindholm and Pastrnak, and all of a sudden they both look good away from each other. However, the following day at practice, Marco Sturm went right back to the lines he had to start that San Jose game, which was Pastrnak, Lindholm, Husnudinov. The second line stayed the same of Zacha, Mittelstadt, Arvidsson, as it should. And then the third line of Minten, Geekie, and Steeves / Mikey Asimov, because they've been on a rotating basis. After practice, Marco Sturm was asked about those lines because the lines that ended the San Jose game looked great, and he didn't go to those lines in practice. And Marco Sturm said, hey, listen, don't read into these lines today. I have not made up my mind for Washington yet. I just put the old lines together for practice but don't look into it. Sure enough, heading into the Washington game, as the Bruins hit the ice for warm-ups, we saw completely new line combinations that we weren't really expecting. We saw a top line of David Pastrnak, Morgan Geekie, and Fraser Minton. We saw a third line of Elias Lindholm, Marat Husnudinov, and Tanner Jeannot. Second line stayed the same. Fourth line was Kuraly, Kastelik, and Mikey Eyssimont. I didn't see those first and third line combinations coming necessarily in that moment because it wasn't what they ended San Jose with, and it wasn't what they started San Jose with. But I did respect Marco's demotion of Elias Lindholm, so to speak. And I did appreciate his creativity. Did it work out very well? I think that the new top line had their moments, and in fact, they did generate a 5-on-5 goal, which is more than the combination of Lindholm and Pastrnak could say for the last however long. Putting Tanner Jeannot with Elias Lindholm and Husnudinov was interesting, but I think the sentiment there was, hey, this guy's going to drag you into the fight. And I don't think that line looked great. But again, I appreciate Marco's creativity and trying to find something that he could work with. I guess my simple pushback would be maybe just go with what you finished San Jose with. But I think it did allow Geekie to go back with Pastrnak. And as I said a minute ago, that line of Pastrnak, Geekie, and Fraser Minton, they did help account for a 5-on-5 goal, which was Charlie McAvoy's first goal of the game. So that was a story heading into the game. I'm curious to see what lines the Bruins elect to go with going forward this week. Again, they have every game's a big game. Every game's a big game. So the Devils, again, they're a struggling team this year. Montreal, obviously they aren't. You're battling with them for third place in the Atlantic. But I think for one game, it clearly worked for the Bruins as a team. I don't think Boston played a strong first period. The Bruins did outshoot the Capitals in that game 34-27. So the Bruins did start to pick up their pace as the game went along. But I can't say that Marco found dynamite line combinations. I think that they just kind of worked for that day. I do like keeping Minton with Pastrnak right now. Give me whatever combinations you want, but I don't want Elias Lindholm with David Pastrnak right now. Not until Elias Lindholm can prove that he can not only produce at 5-on-5 like a top 6 player, but that he can produce at 5-on-5 at all. He has not been a strong 5-on-5 player this year, or at least in terms of offensive production, he hasn't. He's middle of the Bruins roster in 5-on-5 production. Do I expect him to be that of a true top center in the NHL or even a elite number 2 center? Hell no. I know what Elias Lindholm is. I think a lot of us do. He's not this offensive guy anymore. Even in his top offensive years, he had some great line mates with them in Johnny Gaudreau and Matty Tkachuk. But he's capable of providing more than what he's doing at 5-on-5. So again, tip of the cap to Marco for making some changes. And that sends a message. That absolutely sends a message to Elias Lindholm that, hey, buddy, you have not been good enough at 5-on-5, and we're sending you down to the third line. There's no other way to take that if you're Elias Lindholm. Okay. And by the way, that's exactly where he should be playing right now until he can prove otherwise. And oh, by the way, where most of his offenses came this year, which is on the power play, he's not been good in the power play lately either. Now, that's not just Elias. That's the whole power play unit. In fact, let's touch on that real quick right now. The power play for the Bruins, which has been top 5 all year, and for the most part, it's been top 4. It has dipped down to 8th overall in the NHL. Now, at a quick glance, being top 10 in the power play in general is still great. Okay. But when you peel back the onion a little bit more and you know that they've been a top 5 unit all year, the fact that they're now 8th tells you that they've been struggling mightily since the Olympic break ended. And Washington was just the latest example. The Bruins go 0 for 4 on the power play, and they didn't look dangerous at all on any of them, including what was a rather extended 5-on-3 opportunity that the Bruins simply looked like garbage. I said online that they should be effing embarrassed, that top unit, because it's a 5-on-3. Essentially, you lose the face-off, Washington ices it, and you can't regain entry or set up at all for the remainder of the power play on a 5-on-3. They generated no looks, no opportunities, and it was terrible. It was embarrassing. It was absolutely embarrassing. If you have a 5-on-3 and you can't even set up shop, that tells you where their confidence and execution levels at in the power play. And we've talked about it on recent episodes, how the power play needs to improve. And it comes down to outworking your opponent, outnumbering them, outmanning them when you have more players on the ice. It comes down to winning your faceoffs, which is not just center on center. It's wingers and D-man getting in there too. It's simplifying and not waiting for the perfect passing lanes to open up and the perfect shooting lanes to open up. You just you have to get pucks and bodies to the net early and often on a power play. Get the PKers running around, get them thinking, oh shit, what are they going to do? They're willing to shoot here, right? If a penalty kill unit knows that you're just going to sit around the perimeter and look for the perfect pass, perfect shot, you make their job easy. They're not guessing. They're calling your bluff, okay? You need to make penalty killers second guess what's going to happen. And the way that you do that is to show shot early. Let them know, hey, we're going to shoot if we have a lane. Anyway, we can talk about the power play a little bit later on in further episodes. I want to spend some more time today on some takeaways from the Bruins Caps game. So in what was a very interesting game in the sense that only defensemen score goals in this one. Fraser Minton's shootout winner was the only time that a forward found the back of a net. For the Capitals, it was Matt Roy giving them the 1-0 lead in the second period. And then Charlie McAvoy, as I mentioned earlier, got a goal at 5-on-5 for the Bruins, where the Pastrnak, Geeky, and Minton line were working it around low. And Pastrnak, who he's an interesting character right now too, because everybody who knows the Bruins and watches and knows David Pastrnak and knows what he's capable of, everybody with a pair of eyes can see that he hasn't been right for a little bit now. His skating doesn't seem to be as powerful. His decision making is lacking. His execution's lacking. His confidence is lacking. He's trying to do too much at different times, and yet he still has 7 points in his last 5 games. So that's the good news with David Pastrnak, is he is such an effective player that even when he's off, he's still producing. 99% of the players in the NHL wish that when they were struggling, that they were still producing over a point per game. So David's obviously in a bit of a rough stretch right now in terms of execution and confidence. Everybody sees that. That's not a controversial take. But hey, he's still finding a way to impact games on the score sheet, at least on a gamely basis, the last handful plus. So I'm not going to harp on him too much. But his pass to McAvoy on that goal was kind of a microcosm of how he's playing right now, because it was actually a pretty bad pass for a one-timer. It was in McAvoy's feet. But the ironic part is that the way it turned out was McAvoy had to readjust to get a one-timer off with a pass in his feet, and it ended up being an off-speed knuckle puck that went through traffic, where Fraser Minton, again, credit where credit's due, he was taking Logan Thompson's eyes away. So that shot by McAvoy does not go in if Logan Thompson can see it point blank. So again, I think that give David credit for getting the puck to Charlie and winning a board battle probably to get that puck. But you saw with that pass, that wasn't a great that wasn't put on a platter for McAvoy to tee off on by Pastrnak, but it turns out actually being a good thing because it turned into a knuckle puck that ends up going in. So that's one of those plays where 99.9% of the time that's a bad pass by Pastrnak that just doesn't go in, but it does go in, and so David gets a point on the play. But anyway, Charlie gets his first goal of the game, ties it 1-1. Rasmus Sandin, again, continuing the scoring by defensemen in this game, gives the Capitals a 2-1 lead in the third period, a seeing eye shot. I don't think any of the goals that Swayman gave up in this one were really his fault. I think, can't fault him on those ones. Yeah, there were shots from distance, but there was traffic on both of them. Don't think you saw them. And by the way, I don't always give a goalie a pass for a screen, because part of it on occasion is you have to kind of fight through screens. So while 95% of the time, if a goalie is screened, I will give them credit and say, hey, they were screened. There are certain shots that go in where a goalie's screened where I will say I'd still like to see you fight through that screen, but I don't think that these were those. The Bruins tied the game later in the third period. Charlie McAvoy is down low with Victor Arvidsson and Casey Middlestad in a corner board battle, pretty much beneath Washington's goal line. And Charlie helps win the puck battle. Arvidsson gets it back to the point where Pavel Zacha is covering for Charlie. Zacha smartly gets it to the net. Charlie tips it 2-2. McAvoy has been outstanding. He really has been. And, we'll get to him in just a second, just how good he's been this year. But I think he's among the more underrated defensemen this year in terms of offensive production. And it's the best offensive production of his career. And I do feel like he's had an underrated season locally, nationally, league-wide. But again, we'll get to that in short order. And then Fraser Minton. The game goes to overtime. Game goes to a shootout. And Jeremy Swayman stands on his head for a lot of regulation. He had some high danger opportunities or opportunities against and saved them. And again, 9 for 9 in the shootout against the Capitals. You were starting to get weary that the Bruins were going to find a way to lose, and you can't look at Swayman in that situation. If your goalie stops, it's the same thing with Logan Thompson, right? Logan Thompson stopped how many shots in the shootout? 8, and the Capitals lose. If I'm a Capitals fan, you just got to tip your cap to Swayman, but also you can't blame Logan Thompson. That's on the shooters for the Capitals. But Jeremy Swayman was able to come through big for the Bruins, not just in regulation and overtime, but in the shootout in particular. And it was a huge game for the Bruins, huge 2 points. It leapfrogs them over Detroit in the wild card for wild card 1 now. And again, they have the Canadians coming up this week, and Boston's only 2 points behind Montreal. So let's get to Jeremy. No, let's go to Marco Sturm. Let's go to Marco Sturm after the game, talking about the leadership of Charlie McAvoy lately.
What does it do for the team having a guy like Charlie dragging them into the fight, no matter the score of the game?
Yeah, you always need a driver in the room, off the ice, on the ice, and he has a little swagger now, especially after Olympics. It's nice to see, because you need those drivers, and especially when they get rewarded, it's even better.
So let's talk about Charlie for a second, because I think he's been outstanding this year. And he's had a couple of off games. Of course, everybody's going to have a couple off games here and there. But I talked last episode about, is Charlie McAvoy emerging to be the next captain of the Boston Bruins? I still don't know the answer to that. I think he's making as good of a case for himself as he possibly can, to be honest. But who's going to be the Bruins' next captain, David Pastrnak or Charlie McAvoy? To be honest, I don't know, and I really don't care. I think that they're both good options. And I'm curious who the Bruins choose, but that's where my curiosity kind of ends. I don't think the Bruins will be better or worse off with one or the other as the captain. I'm just curious about who the Bruins decide to choose. Outside of that, though, I don't really care who the next captain is. But Charlie this year has 9 goals, 40 assists, 49 points in 54 games. That's 10th best among NHL defensemen in points, and it's 10th best among NHL defensemen in points per game. So Charlie he's a top 10 defenseman in scoring for maybe the first time in his career. Now, is he on the same trajectory and same par as the top offensive defenseman in this league, like a Cale Makar or an Evan Bouchard or a Quinn Hughes? No. And he never will generate at their levels offensively. But for a guy who does so much defensively for the Bruins as a defenseman, to be a top 10 scorer at your position as well that's the steps that we've been waiting to see Charlie take again. Charlie was great offensively, in his second, third, fourth year in the NHL. He had a big year in 22-23, but the last couple of years, he's been a little bit off offensively, even for his standards. So it's great to see him bouncing back. And, it's not even just that he's bouncing back on the power play, that was a big drawback of his, was he couldn't produce in the power play and it was killing him. But this year, his offense, he's scoring on the power play, yeah, but he's scoring 5-on-5 too. And last game's a perfect example. 2 goals at 5-on-5 from a defenseman. And he's been nails to the Bruins. He really has been. He's got a 6-game point streak that, earlier let's back up here to New Year's Eve. If you remember, the Bruins had a 6-game losing streak heading into New Year's Eve in Edmonton. Boston won that game on December 31st. Since that game, the Bruins have played 26 games. Charlie McAvoy has points in 23 of those 26 games. He has scored a point in 23 of his last 26 games. And oh, by the way, he has an Olympic gold medal sandwiched in that time frame as well. He has 30 points in that stretch. So he has points in 23 of his last 26. And in those 26 games, he has 8 goals, 22 assists, 30 points. He had a 9-game point streak that was broken a few weeks ago by a game. And now he's back on a 6-game point streak. So Charlie's been outstanding. He's been fantastic, and he deserves a ton of credit. And again, when you consider the fact that the Bruins at 5-on-5 have been wavering for quite some time now in terms of their forward lines outside the second line, Charlie stepping up is massive. The Bruins don't win that game yesterday without him. They just don't, right? So they don't win the game without Jeremy either. But the reality is, as good as Jeremy played, the Bruins did have to come back twice down a goal. I'm not blaming Jeremy for it. That's just the situation that they were in. Somebody had to step up, and, other guys did too, right? David got Charlie the pass in the first one. Minton screened. Arvidsson and Middlestat were helping Charlie battle in the corner on the second goal. Zaka got it to the net on the second goal. But again, Charlie's in the middle of all of it. So he's been awesome for the Bruins, and really, I don't see him slowing down. It's been great to see him step up this year. Speaking of stepping up, now let's go to Jeremy Swayman after the Bruins-Capitals game.
In terms of, the importance of this win, obviously getting back in the win column on the road, how's that feel?
That's excellent. That's exactly what, we wanted to start this road trip off with, is a win, and we know how big these points are, so no matter how it gets done, that's all we care about.
Marco said you guys would have to feel comfortable with the tight checking, close score today. How do you feel like you handled what the Caps bring to you guys?
I thought we did a great job with responses especially, and anything that came our way when they pushed, we knew that we were going to protect middle and make sure that we were playing good defense first, and it translated really well.
I didn't have a tape measure out, but I'm going to guess every one of those shootout attempts came from 2, 3, or 4 feet. Did you ever expect a guy's going to come down like Chikrin and just say, screw it, I'm just going to load here and rip it from 40 feet or something?
Wait, what do you mean?
Well, every shot is, I'm not criticizing here, but every shot is tight, every time. A guy with a great slap shot,
oh, sure.
you never see a guy take it.
No, I think, again, these guys are so skilled, and, they work on it all summer long, so no matter how it comes, you just want to get in front of it.
I love that last question. I had to include that. You You ever just think a guy's gonna come down and just fucking rip it on you? What do you mean? That's obviously not exactly how the question was posed, but that was an example of I think that was Kevin Paul DuPont of the Globe, maybe if I recognize voices, but I don't know. That just felt like a hey, I traveled down to this game to cover the team. There's not a ton to ask about. I'm just gonna ask a random question about shootout strategy. I thought that was funny. His reaction. What do you mean? So Jeremy was awesome in that game. And I asked the question, has he had an underrated season? Because honestly, goaltending can be a thankless position. When they're playing great, it's kind of hush-hush, right? When goalies are playing well, it's kind of hush-hush. When they slip up or have a bad game or let in a bad goal or aren't even the reason that somebody lost, but unfairly or fairly, they give up a goal and people are harping on it. Goaltending is a thankless position. Should people be applauding Jeremy for his play at times the way they applaud others? Sure. Yeah, I think so. I think in this town in particular, in Boston, but also in hockey culture in general, if a fan base isn't talking about a goalie much, that means that they're doing their job pretty well. And I think that's where I fall on Jeremy Swayman this year. Is he having an underrated season? No, I don't think so. No, I think he's having a perfectly rated season. I think he's been really good. I don't know if he's been great, because I think great should be reserved for, I don't toss around great lightly. I think great should be reserved for a top 3 goalie in any given year. I think good is between average and really good. And I think really good is between good and great. So I think Jeremy's been really good. And here are some numbers to back it up. Jeremy has faced the 4th most shots of any goalie in the NHL this year. So I want to give you that parameter right now so that you understand the volume he's facing. I think that's a fair number, a fair statistic to share, right? He's not some goalie who's barely facing any rubber. He's facing almost more than anybody else in the league. With that said, among goalies with 35 games played this year or more, so basically all starting goalies in the NHL, give or take, Jeremy is ranked 16th in goals against average, 2.77 goals against. He's ranked 10th in save percentage, 905. Okay. 16th in goals against average and 10th in save percentage. Not exactly a Vezina candidate, but not one of the worst goalies in the league either. It's average to above average. However, this is where he starts to get above average. He's 3rd in goals saved above expected in the league among goalies who have played at least 35 games. Okay, so again, it's mainly starters that are in this parameter. He's 3rd in goals saved above expected with 21.8. Okay, he's 3rd in goals saved above expected per 60 at 0.502. He's 3rd in wins above replacement at 3.64. Okay. He's 11th in low danger save percentage. So top 3rd of the league, nearly top 10. Good, we'll take that, but it's low danger. You expect that from a guy like him who's getting paid. He's 5th in medium danger save percentage. So that's really good. And he's 13th in high danger save percentage. So he's top half of the league in everything. Even his goals against average is dead nuts in the middle. 16th. So he also has the 5th most wins of any goalie with 26. His record overall is 26 wins, 14 losses, 3 overtime or shootout losses. So listen, I think, is Jeremy underrated? Is he having an underrated season this year? I don't think so. I mean, again, he was on the Olympic roster for the Americans. He won a gold medal. He's paid as one of the higher end goalies in the league, and he's performing. Basically the way I read this is, look, are his goals against average great? No, they're not great. Is his save percentage great? I would say it's very good. But again, he's faced the fourth most shots of anybody. But so when you consider that he's faced more shots than almost everybody, and he's third in goals save above expected and third in wins above replacement, that goes to tell you that he is helping the Bruins a lot more than he's hurting them. So I think Jeremy is having a perfectly rated season so far. And that's great because this time last year, he was one of the worst goalies in the NHL based on his numbers. And again, it was a shitty year for the Bruins as a team, but he was one of the worst goalies in the league. And we were talking about him going into this season, and it was the final year of his contract where he had no trade protection. So after last year's off-season circus where he's, talking about his contract negotiations in the public and how he wants to reset the goalie market, and then you have, Cam Neely saying that he could think of 64 million reasons why Swayman should be signing right now. He misses the first part of training camp. He and the team pretty much suck from start to finish all year. People were talking about, do you trade Jeremy Swayman if he struggles again out of the gates this year while you still can before his trade protection kicks in? And, you're always going to have some people that are never going to like a player, right? So I'm sure there are people out there right now that think the Bruins should trade Swayman. I think that's the silent minority probably out there. But listen, the fact that Jeremy has bounced back this year is huge. You don't want to have a problem where you don't have a number one goalie. I mean, yes, there are some examples where you can point to a team that won a Stanley Cup and their goalie wasn't exactly Patrick Waugh or Marty Brodeur. But at the same time, look at some organizations that have never really had a goalie. Like, look at the Philadelphia Flyers. The Philadelphia Flyers, they can never find a goalie solution. And there are other teams as well that they've had everything but the goalie at certain times throughout their career, and they can never find that guy. So you don't want to be one of those teams that can't identify a number one goaltender. And with the cap going up, I think Swayman's cap hit won't be as bad either. So hopefully this year is a sign of what his contract will look like in Boston rather than last year. And to finish things off, we will look at the Bruins road ahead this week. It starts Monday night against the New Jersey Devils. Again, that's a game the Bruins should win. New Jersey they're floundering. They've had a bad year. No other way to put it. I don't care if this game is on the road, which again has been a struggle for the Bruins. That was another big part of their win against the Capitals. It was their first road win in nearly 2 calendar months. Now, of course, they had a month off nearly for the Olympic break, but that was a big win. You want to start that road trip off on the right foot, and to start off with a win in Washington hopefully starts to build some confidence for the Bruins going forward. And they should, if they want to, again, you got to win games you're supposed to win if you want to be a playoff team. And this is a game the Bruins are supposed to win. Are they supposed to win in Montreal on Tuesday? No, I think that's if you're looking at Vegas betting lines, I'm sure Montreal is the betting favorite at home. But you can win that game, no doubt. But this game against the Devils, you should win that game. And as I said, Tuesday night, the Bruins play in Montreal against the Canadiens. So those two teams have had some great games this year. It started off in Montreal back in November, where you had some fights to start that game. That was the Charlie McAvoy slap shot to the face game that broke his jaw. Bruins found a way to win that game. Montreal got some revenge back in Boston. The following time they met, it was a close 2-2 game. Late in the second period, it looked like Elias Lindholm had given the Bruins a 3-2 lead, but it was ruled goalie interference or something like that by Pasternak, who barely touched Montembeault, or maybe it was Fowler. I forget who was playing that game. And then the wheels fell off of the Bruins in the third period, and they ended up losing like 6-2 or 6-3 or something. And then the Bruins got revenge in their most recent meeting coming from behind in the third period. Fraser Minton with a big goal to give the Bruins to tie the game for Boston, who was trailing. And then Morgan Geekie got the game-winning goal on the power play for Boston on a shot that nobody in the arena saw go in. That's how good of a shot it was, how hard of a shot it was. But so, again, Montreal right now is 2 points up on Boston for a third place in the Atlantic Division. So if the Bruins win tonight against the Devils, you could be talking about the Bruins and Canadiens being tied. I don't know if Montreal's playing tonight. I should probably double check that. But either way, it could be the Bruins and the Canadiens tied for points with third place in the division on the line, which I don't know if you want that because right now Tampa's second. So you'd be playing them in the first round of the playoffs. So maybe the Bruins are best to have finished in the wild card. But hey, they're trying to make the playoffs at all costs. You can't get picky about do we want a wild card spot or A3 because the Bruins aren't even guaranteed this playoff spot right now at all. So you'd rather play Tampa than nobody. So with that said, other news, James Higgins, BC, Boston College, they defeated Maine last Friday. So they are now heading to the Hockey East semifinals at the Garden this Friday. If they win Hockey East, James Higgins' watch is going to extend for a little bit longer because Boston College will get an automatic bid to the national tournament. If BC loses Hockey East, whether it's in the semifinals on Friday or the championship on Saturday, I don't think they qualify for the national tournament. So in layman's terms, if BC loses Friday or Saturday, either way, I think it's a possibility that James Higgins is playing for the Boston Bruins on Tuesday at home against the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's just my guess. If BC loses Friday or Saturday, keep your eye on the horizon for James Higgins wearing a spoked B next Tuesday against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So if you're a betting man or woman out there and you're trying to hedge on getting tickets for Tuesday, you might want to get them now because if BC loses on Friday or Saturday and the Bruins sign Higgins, tickets might go up at the last minute. So maybe try to get your hands on those tickets sooner than later. And if you buy tickets now and BC wins Hockey East and Higgins doesn't play on Tuesday, well, I'm sorry. But I'm just trying to help you out and give you some intuition that I have on that one. Okay? So that'll do it for this episode. Thank you all very much for listening. I will be back on Wednesday this week, as well as Friday as normal. But I will have a guest appearance on Wednesday, and we will discuss the Bruins and Devils tonight, Montreal and Boston tomorrow. So enjoy the Bruins games this week, and I will talk to you on Wednesday.